Greetings, Jamaicans in the hills and valleys, streets and lanes, and in the uptown garrison of Twitter. I am Ashley Ann Foster, and this is the inaugural edition of Hardline, where we delve deep into the issues that you're talking about and get you the real answers. Jamaica Votes 2020. This is our patriotic duty to vote. And this is the first time that we'll be voting amidst a global pandemic. But it does not change the fact that we must go out and vote. So, Hardline, Jamaica Votes. We're going to take a quick break, come back, because we have the people at the nucleus of the politics who are going to tell it like it is and answer your questions.
ARC is one of the leading manufacturers and distributors of building materials in Jamaica. We have been serving our global customers and partners, from builders, contractors, interior designers, with innovation leveraging technology, superior quality, service and efficiency for almost 20 years. At ARC, we are committed to ensure that all products are adequately stocked, and by achieving this, we have managed to be one of the primary carriers of the largest inventory in Jamaica.
Welcome back. You're watching Hardline. Thank you so much for staying with us. So to get right into it, in February 2016, Prime Minister Andrew Holness led the Jamaica Labour Party to victory in the island's 17th general elections, and it was by a very, very narrow majority, one seat. Today, almost 5 years later, hot on the heels of a September 3rd election, a lot has happened in the nation, and yet a lot hasn't happened. And many of us would say, no big shocker. Well, this is because most of our politicians, like most Jamaican men, have broken more promises than they've ever kept. But guess what? We're used to it. Promises, comfort, fools. So, to quote King Beanie Man, memories don't leave like people do. They always remember you. Whether they be good or bad, it's just the memories that you have. So, before we go to the polls, to exercise our essential democratic rights, let's take a walk down memory lane. And we have to understand two things. One, it is our patriotic duty to participate in the life of our nation by voting, and voting for whoever and whatever we believe in. No matter who it is, it's your choice. Two, it is our patriotic duty to hold all of our politicians accountable, regardless of whether we like them or we dislike them, whether we're friends with them. They're here to serve us. Three, country over party, not party over country. So I'm hoping that all of you have already been enumerated and you're getting ready to vote. Due to the chronic partisanship, however, I have to give this caveat because partisanship in Jamaica is more rampant than COVID. Making myself very, very clear right now about today's topic, in the name of democracy. And in the name of democracy, we have to go there today because the Jamaica Labour Party is the government. The JLP was given a mandate by us, you, the Jamaican people. And like any contractual arrangement, before we renew or before we discontinue our contract, we have to consider the good and the bad and consider whether or not there have been fundamental or forgivable breaches, or if any at all. So according to our Hardline research, the JLP's 2016 10-point plan, of those 10 points, only 4 of them have been kept in entirety, and 6 have either been kept partially or not at all. The JLP made other important promises on the platform, in the papers, and right after they won us over. There are a lot of promises there too. With that said, let's take the walk down memory lane, and we're going to go back right now to what should have been the first 100 days. Do you remember the fixed date election?
Mr. Speaker, a critical plank of the growth agenda is to reduce the uncertainty of government action, reduce the time for decisions, flatten the hierarchical structures, and speed up the bureaucratic processes. This will reduce political risk and government-related risks in investment. Fixed election date is not merely a political initiative, it is more so a competitive initiative.
So fixed day elections, this was originally a promise made by the former Prime Minister Bruce Golding in 2010. It was made again by our current Prime Minister, the most honourable Andrew Holness in 2016, as you just saw right there. So promise made, promise unkept. Here is another one. Do you remember term limits?
Within the first 100 days of government, we will start the legislative process to introduce term limits on the office of Prime Minister.
Of course, we'll take a deeper look at term limits later. You're watching Hardline. I promise. I'll be right back.
The following is a paid announcement by the People's National Party.
Building your Kingston, building Clarendon, building your Central, Portland to Westmoreland, building your St. Bess, building St. Catherine, yes. St. Mary now get left, Hanover to the west, building up St. James, St. Thomas of the wave, building Manchester name, Trelawney we are clear. Hey, building your Jamaica, BNP does up, build it up, building your Jamaica, BNP does up, build it up, build it up, build it up, hospital and school, farmer plant more food, build it up, build it up, more factory like a road that improve, build it up, put the X beside the head, that's what you're gonna do, build it up. We are built Jamaica for me and you.
The proceeding was a paid announcement by the People's National Party.
The following is a paid announcement by the Jamaica Labour Party.
Fishing is not just a pastime for me. It's my livelihood and that's how I make my money. So when COVID come, it mashed me up. But the government put in place something for people like me. And I respect that. And if him can do that for me, I know him can help we to build back stronger.
The proceeding was a paid announcement by the Jamaica Labour Party.
One of our most prized departments is our lumber treatment plant. It is one of the most modern and state-of-the-art treatment facilities for lumber in the entire Caribbean. Our lumber is bought in raw form. They are then carefully loaded into a pressurized cylinder where it is treated with special chemicals. After the internal treatment process is completed, the lumber is transferred from the cylinder to the drip pad where it sits to be naturally dried. Our plant has the capacity to treat 50 million board feet of lumber annually. Not only do we treat our own lumber, we also offer lumber treatment to our valued customers.
Promise kept, I'm back, and this is Hardline. We're going to continue to look at promises made, and let's do an accountability recap. Did the government deliver on its 2016 promises to the Jamaican people? So let's take you back to the promise of impeachment proceedings and the Prime Minister's campaign undertaking that only members of unquestioned integrity would sit in Parliament.
Within the first 100 days of our government, we will start the legislative process to institute, and I want you to listen to me carefully, impeachment proceedings in Parliament.
And we also believe in the promise of government accountability. So over to you, the most honourable Brogard.
People who form my government will understand that they're not there to serve themselves. So they will know that they will be held accountable for their actions. So it's not like how the PNP run their show.
Well, over the last 4 years, we've had an unprecedented level of shocking scandals, from the Ministry of Education to the state-owned oil refinery Petrojam, the educational institution CMU, Mombasa Grass, used cars for cops, the scandal at the Firearm Licensing Authority, and what some are calling sweetheart deals, literally and figuratively. Scandal after scandal has made good campaign fodder for the opposition.
It started before year one had been completed with the bushing scandal. Then there was the police used car scandal, the firearm licensing scandal, the $17 million welcome sign. the missing funds at Duns Rivers Fall, the misuse of funds at the Student Bureau. You know, Mr. Speaker, I ask myself all the while, why is only the scandal bag that them ban? Them should ban the whole bag of scandal.
Remember, every minister was to have a job description. So what happened to that? Because which one of us would get hired without a job description or even the requisite qualifications? Unless, of course, it's Petrojam or JUTC, you know, jobs for the boys and the girls in green. There was also a commitment of doubling the minimum wage and not stopping until it was set at 12,100 Jamaican dollars. Today, minimum wage was only increased to $7,000, which is 5,100 short of the promise.
We are not change up the system, and that is how we are going to increase the minimum wage in the first instance by $2,000. I mean, now stop till we reach $12,100.
Do you remember the promise of 250,000 new jobs? So based on the projection, that should have been about 50,000 jobs per year, but it hasn't been that, because between October 2018 and October 2019, only 29,200 jobs were created. So the verdict, promise not kept. Do you also remember the promise of a referendum on the removal of the Queen, legalization of cannabis, and the Buggery Law, solely on the basis that we, you, me, everybody, the Jamaican people, should have a role in the decisions that are going to be made that impact heavily upon our future?
We will also place on that referendum the removal of the Buggery Law. You can decide what you want. These things are important. They define the Jamaican state, and the Parliament shouldn't, on their own, make that decision. You should say how your country should be defined.
You should decide how your country is going to be defined. So do you remember when you thought that you were going to sleep with your windows and doors open? Well, the crime monster is still on the loose. And this is despite the SOEs, the ZOSOs, and the SOSOs. We've had over 1,200 murders, with around 2/3 being committed in police divisions under states of emergency or other emergency mechanisms. According to the Jamaica 2020 Crime and Safety Report, between 2018 and 19, there was an increase in murder of about 3.4%. And so the feeling on the ground is...
Terrible, miss. Boy, me wish God, because Andrew can't do nothing to it. Me wish God could have do something about the crime and the violence.
The thing about crime is that I figured we dropped the ball, my generation dropped the ball, because discipline is not there in the society. I mean, even for myself, speaking to myself, no discipline, and therefore we didn't manage situations as well as we should. Crime is a mentality. I mean, you have to go to the roots. Why is it that you have a couple of kids with a whole heap of CXC in prison?
Another unkept promise includes the promise of 5 in 4. 5% GDP growth within 4 years.
Have 5% in 4 years, an objective with a time attached to it. That's how things get done. Yes. When you set a public objective and you put a timeline to it.
What we were told in 2016 were commitments, strong commitments, are now aspirational targets. And as our bills double and we pay for those who bridge, may I remind us all of the promise of cheaper and better electricity. Try not to black out.
I don't like to make promise. I make commitment. And under the Labour Party government, we are going to ensure that we bring to this country the big power plants. We are going to ensure that we bring to this country the big energy companies that can put the money in here to build the plants to give you cheaper and better electricity.
Well, I'm going to protest JPS tomorrow, anybody joining me, because the light bill is astronomical. Other broken promises include the divestment of loss-making entities and the stock market listing of the UDC and Factories Corporation. Additionally, the promise to create an intergenerational 50 or 60-year mortgage to make home ownership payments easier remains unfulfilled. Promises, promises, promises. Well, I promise to be right back.
ARC is one of the leading manufacturers and distributors of building materials in Jamaica. We have been serving our global customers and partners, from builders, contractors, interior designers, with innovation leveraging technology, superior quality, service and efficiency for almost 20 years. At ARC, we are committed to ensure that all products are adequately stocked, and by achieving this, we have managed to be one of the primary carriers of the largest inventory in Jamaica.
Promise kept. I am right back with you, and I know that some of you are probably seething, you're vexed, very vexed, and you're probably thinking, well, I promise only to be fair, so let's look at the promises made and kept by the Andrew Holness administration. Let's start with the most famous promise, the $1.5 million tax break for the pay-as-you-earn worker. So despite tons and tons of criticism from the opposition, this was the biggest ticket item for the uncommitted voter in 2016.
I see them jumping up about our proposal to raise the income tax threshold to $1.5 million. We have studied it carefully.
Promise kept. Now over to the former Minister of Finance, Mana Yard, who was taken out of the yard. Audley Shaw, this is from his budget presentation.
We are announcing today that we are raising the personal income tax threshold to $1.5 million across the board for everyone.
The $1.5 million break was part and parcel with the promise of real tax system reform, which has led to a notable reduction in transfer tax, estate duties, and estate taxes, thereby creating a more business-friendly environment. Also, despite reneging on the campaign promise not to use the NHT fund for any other purpose but housing, another solid delivery from the JLP is the promise of National Housing Trust reform. The government has reduced interest rates, increased the loan ceiling, making housing options more accessible for the working Jamaican.
This is not talk. This is not promise. This is reality now. We are going through Jamaica, and this is what we are doing. This was there. But by virtue of the government's intervention, the taxpayers' money, this is what it was spent on.
Increased employment is another delivery from the government. Despite not reaching the 250,000 job target, the unemployment rate has significantly decreased. In 2017, the unemployment rate was 12.7%, and in 2019, the rate dropped to 7.8%. Of course, this warrants gloating from the Minister of Finance, Nigel Clark.
4, 5, 6, 2020. We don't count yet. Count it with me. I'm telling you, anybody who don't believe what is happening, just look at the advertisements in the paper. Jobs, jobs, jobs everywhere, Mr. Speaker.
Jobs, jobs, jobs everywhere, Mr. Speaker. So better SLB terms was another slam dunk for the JLP's government. And the Student Loan Bureau waived processing fees for applicants for funding for the 2020-2021 academic year. Also to boast about, the reduced interest rates, extended moratoriums, and temporary waiver on application and processing fees have made the cost of the tertiary education for all Jamaicans more attainable.
Is committed to reducing the interest rate on your student loan.
The country saw post-grad loans reduced from 9% to 7.5%. The pay-as-you-go loans have been reduced from 6% to 4%. And all SLB borrowers employed full-time to registered charities were given a gift. And the gift was having 10% of their loan balance forgiven for every year that they're employed to a charity. Now that's huge, and it's impactful delivery of the promise to reform the SLB. Here's another promise that the government has made good.
We will immediately restore the benefits at the junior stock market to grow equity financing for the expansion of small to medium-sized businesses as they form the stable base for job creation.
This was and is still a big, big boon for many small and medium-sized businessmen and assertive female entrepreneurs like Kimala Bennett, innovators. So the restoration of the junior stock exchange benefits have afforded a growth opportunity to many MSMEs. Here's another slam dunk promise. Another delivery from the JLP was the establishment of the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation.
That ministry will be tasked to ensure that every single investment dollar that is spent in Jamaica is spent efficiently, and that every single piece of investment that is done in Jamaica creates.
And big up yourself, Babsy. The implementation of the National Strategic Action Plan to eliminate gender-based violence was a welcome addition to our policy. Her efforts and achievements in entertainment and culture are also noteworthy.
We have introduced a policy to end gender-based violence. But I'm telling the women, don't provoke your man. Don't go scratch them up because you hear say them have another woman.
So we're going to clap for the policy, but Babsy, the women of this nation are still waiting for their domestic violence shelters. But good on you. We're going to have to also acknowledge the efforts of Babsy Grange. Under her watch, the reggae music was inscribed on the UNESCO representative list of intangible cultural heritage of humanity. Also, Minister Grange is currently VP of UNESCO General Council. That's a big, big deal. Thank you, madam. Back to the promises. The government has also delivered the HOPE program as a national apprenticeship and service program. Although not fully delivered, the government has also made some headway with investment in tech, capital investments in water, and this is despite constant water lockoffs due to drought NWC. We also saw the appointment of one investment ambassador, as opposed to a promise of an entire cadre, a council of investment ambassadors, to improve the country's international profile. There's also been little progress regarding the rebuilding of a few town centres, but a little progress is better than no progress. So to top off this segment, let's give the PM a moment of glory. Here's a recap of his achievements to date.
They said we couldn't do 1.5. We did 1.5. We removed business taxes, and then we gave another 1.5. We removed 1.5% of the GCT.
We're taking the hard line. And up next, my visit with the leader of the opposition, Dr. Peter Phillips, on whether or not the PNP is ready for government. Right now, though, with COVID numbers on the rise, Hardline took to the streets to get your feedback on the upcoming COVID elections.
COVID has affected me in a lot of ways because this is my business place, and since COVID, there's no money has been generated, nothing. I'm just coming out of faith, and because I have to come at my business every day to feel better in myself. But COVID has mashed up everything for me, period.
The COVID is affecting people, and you're going to call an election. Isn't there going to be crowd? Make the election go on and done with everything in the country and make the country get to go ahead. You hear me? And when me like Desmond Mackenzie, come a Harbour Street, Craft Market, come settle if you settle. Make a place run good. From March, we're not doing any business in here. And now you're thinking of calling an election. Even when the Prime Minister tell us to go home, did he make provision for us? Go home to do what? The tourists come and say the tourists if stay in a hotel and we don't forget them, but then they can't call election. With the COVID, no fi kill we have, because they're no country. And you come here and come in a straw market, because no country. Jamaica mash up completely. Because right here now back to school. The pitney them and them parents, them no have no money if you go back, send them to back to school. The children, them no have no sitting there, none tablets. Them parents no have no money if you buy none if you send them, they no want rasta. We no virus, we no slave, we no everything, we mash up.
The following is a paid announcement by the People's National Party.
Tell me something. You think you really matter to the JLP government? Can you sleep with your windows and doors open? Aren't you tired of worrying if your children will make it home safely? Who can you trust to put in you and your family first? It's time to build your Jamaica.
Put your X beside the head. Vote PNP. The proceeding was a paid announcement by the People's National Party.
The following is a paid announcement by the Jamaica Labour Party.
I've dedicated my life to serving the people of Jamaica, and my greatest pleasure is to see the transformation of someone's life directly linked to a policy of the government. I get many letters from people all over, but one letter from a young man moved me almost to tears. Dear Prime Minister, I want to
thank you for giving us young people hope under the HOPE program. I left high school 5 years now with no subject and just could not find anything to do. I saw you on TV talking about the HOPE program. I signed up for the program. Today, I can do tailoring and I work with a company making uniforms. I am looking to start a business in fashion designing. The HOPE program saved my life.
Keep on doing it for the youths.
The proceeding was a paid announcement by the Jamaica Labour Party.
One of our most prized departments is our lumber treatment plant. It is one of the most modern and state-of-the-art treatment facilities for lumber in the entire Caribbean. Our lumber is bought in raw form. They're then carefully loaded into a pressurized cylinder where it is treated with special chemicals. After the internal treatment process is completed, the lumber is transferred from the cylinder to the drip pad where it sits to be naturally dried. Our plant has the capacity to treat 50 million board feet of lumber annually. Not only do we treat our own lumber, we also offer lumber treatment to our valued customers.
Welcome back. You're watching Hardline. Thank you so much for staying with us. Now, recently, I visited the Leader of the Opposition, Dr. Peter Phillips. Let's take a look at that. Now, we're going to get straight to the issues that you want to hear about with regard to this 2020 general election. Dr. Phillips, tell the Jamaican people why it is that you should be the next Prime Minister of this nation.
My preoccupation is not with really being Prime Minister and not being Prime Minister. My preoccupation is with getting the kind of Jamaica that I believe the country has the potential to live up to. And so I am particularly interested in ensuring that we are able to create this stakeholder society which gives the people of Jamaica, the 700,000 of us who live in so-called informal settlements that they disparagingly call squatters, an opportunity to become stakeholders. I am concerned about eliminating the what is being called the apartheid in education arrangements that have a first-class and second-class quality of education in the country. I am concerned about getting an economy that can give us high-paying jobs and not the kind of business model for the country that relies on low-paying employment as the basic attraction to overseas capital and investment capital generally. So that's my concern, and I believe that as I am the person that the People's National Party has chosen to lead a team. I am not about a one-man band. I'm about leading a team, and for the moment I am here leading that team, and I'm interested in making those things happen. It's not a matter of vainglory that I want to achieve this particular goal or that particular goal.
What about your detractors though, Dr. Phillips? What about the persons who might be concerned that you recently had a health scare? How do you respond to that?
I tell them, talk to my doctors. Right now, I am absolutely free. I'm not taking one bit of medication, whatever. I have been out on the road in this campaign day after day, night after night, spending 8 hours and more. So we're doing the job. Whenever we can't do the job, we stop.
So those questions about fitness and about your readiness, how do you respond to them?
As I said in the beginning, talk to my doctors.
You feel fit?
I am absolutely fit. Fitter than before, quite frankly.
Yes?
Yeah.
You feel ready?
Yes.
To lead the country?
Yes.
What about the persons, though, on social media, in the uptown garrison of Twitter, that is what I call it, who feel that there is a rift within the People's National Party that puts it in a state of unreadiness?
Well, I think that there are those people who want to think bad things about the PNP. I think what you will see in our campaign, that all the PNP people are on deck. We have had differences, we have had internal campaigns time and time again, and we are able to come together and lead the country going forward to achieve great things for the country. I'll just put it simply this way. The things that unite us as members of the People's National Party are always greater than and stronger than any differences we might have. Every political party has differences, and they are able to deal with them. The Jamaica Labour Party had its huge differences between Shaw and Holness. And if you listen to some of what was said at the time, but it hasn't prevented them from, in fact, forming a government. And in fact, we are very much united in this current effort. We are together as a team, and each of us doing our part. That's the nature of political life.
Now, you mentioned a team. A lot of persons are seeing Andrew Holness out at the fore as one of the most popular leaders, according to the pollsters that Jamaica has ever seen. Now, that difference in approach, the PNP team approach and the Andrew Holness approach, do you think it will impact the campaign?
We'll see. Okay. We'll see. Look, all through my life, I have had people say, this can't be done, that can't be done. For the first year of the administration in 2012, when we were negotiating with the fund, we had all kinds of people saying all kinds of things. We did what we thought was right. I have always found in my experience that sticking to your commitment to do what is right to the best of your judgment and assessment always beats trying to do what is popular in a moment. Popularity is a very fickle thing. It comes and it goes. Your judgment might not always be right, but if you stick to the judgment to the best of your ability and do what is right by the country, then history will vindicate you.
So the talk about age being a factor, the talk about sharp dressing, and all of those seemingly superficial things, they don't factor in your mind?
For me, when I wake up each morning, I try to figure out what are the tasks that need to be done. How best do I perform those tasks? How do I mobilize the key moving parts to achieve the tasks that we have to achieve as a party? Or when I was in government, within the ministries for which I was responsible. And that has guided me through life.
Okay. So Dr. Phillips, what is it that the PNP is bringing to the table?
Well, first of all, as was embodied in the covenant document that all our members of parliament signed, we are committed to good governance and to eliminating corruption. And what's significant about that covenant document is that every member of parliament authorized, supported firm action by the leader of the party against anyone who was accused or convicted of any breach of the rules of good governance by the key agencies, including police, MOCA, FID, but not limited to them, National Integrity Commission, right? Secondly, our commitment overall is to tackling the problem of social inequality and financial exclusion in the country. So we intend to deal with the question of land for the landless, first of all, both in the urban areas, as I say, where you have people living in many, many communities, including some that I represent, who have been living there for years, generations, grandparents, parents, children, grandchildren, and yet have no title for the land and are at risk of upheaval at any point. We need to empower them, not by giving away land, but by making it easy to acquire this land. So that's another area. Plus in agriculture, to modernize agriculture with agricultural transformation must also begin with the question of giving the small farmers, the 60% of small farmers who farm land for which they have no title and who by virtue of that are excluded from the mainstream of the economic life of the country, can't get a loan to buy the pump so they can irrigate their small crops, can't get the loan to buy the small tractor, can't get the loan to deal with the pickup that they need to because they don't have the necessary collateral to move the business. So that is another one of our fundamental commitments. We have the commitment to digitize the economy and the society by ensuring that there is no part of the country that will not be served by the new digital economy. You know, in the same way that in the 70s, Michael Manley established rural electrification program to ensure that the entire country got electricity. Electricity was the key public utility of the 20th century. In the 21st century, what we need is access to the internet and the digital economy. And we are going to make the same effort to ensure that everyone is included in that digital economy in Jamaica. That's another one of our basic commitments. We're going to make improvements on the ease of doing business, because really, especially for small and medium-sized businesses, if they are not able to get through customs and the rest of the governmental bureaucracy quickly and easily, then they're going to be at a disadvantage. And we need to understand that bureaucratic humbug penalizes the small businesses particularly. It's one thing for the big corporations that can have a whole department to go and negotiate customs and government departments. But if it is you and 6 people and you're taking out 1/6 of your labor force, usually the most senior, to go and sit down in government offices to get things that should be easily available to you online, and that you don't need to go and plead with somebody to get it to happen, then we're not going to grow by the 4 and 5% that we need to grow. So there is that. And then there are the individual commitments regarding students and access to student loan without collateral being needed. We access for support for small people in communities to get the benefits from light and water and those services. I'm not going into the details now, but we're going to be speaking to that in our manifesto in detail. And one of the things I really want to say about our manifesto effort, it is tailored through using the digital resources available to us, so that everyone, whether you're a policeman or a civil servant or a small farmer or an entertainer or whatever, or unemployed, that you can look at what we are committing to and see what is in it for you. I want to mention particularly the entertainers who are part of the new economy. You know, we have an economy that has been rooted in the traditional tourism, bauxite, manufacturing, etc. We are committed to unlocking the innovative potential of the country, to recognizing that sectors such as your entertainers, your fashion designers, your dramatists, all of these people are part of a rapidly growing sector in the world economy. and where Jamaica has made its name, and the Jamaican people have in fact pioneered opportunities, as we saw in the clash between Beanie Man and Bounty Killer and others, but where there is not adequate support for these sectors. We are committing ourselves to really unlocking this potential for innovation among our new entrepreneurs and our small businesses.
We're here with Dr. Peter Phillips. Sit tight, Hardline will be right back. Stay with us.
ARC is one of the leading manufacturers and distributors of building materials in Jamaica. We have been serving our global customers and partners, from builders, contractors, interior designers, with innovation leveraging technology, superior quality, service and efficiency for almost 20 years. At ARC, we are committed to ensure that all products are adequately stocked, and by achieving this, we have managed to be one of the primary carriers of the largest inventory in Jamaica.
We are back with the Leader of the Opposition and the President of the People's National Party, Dr. Peter David Phillips. Dr. Phillips, young people, it is a thing. I'm a younger person, so I'd like to ask, what about jobs? Because as down in Montego Bay this week, and as speaking to a lot of persons, and the greatest concern was, okay, so tourism is out. What are we going to do? What about jobs for the people, with a focus on younger people who have to carry their families through this pandemic?
Well, jobs, we're not giving up on the existing sectors. We are saying that BPO and others will continue to expand. The world economy is going to be going through a crisis, but entertainment is the most rapidly growing sector in the world. If we get the entertainment lawyers, if we get the sound technicians and engineers, the studio engineers and others, that is tens of thousands of jobs by developing these sectors. We can move also on getting the higher income sectors in the BPO. We don't need the university graduate to come and just be a call center person, although not saying nothing wrong about that. But there are higher value components of the business process outsourcing sector, like contract advice online, like medical advice online, like accounting advice online, which will provide thousands of jobs if we unlock the innovative potential, like designing software and doing the coding that is part of that. Those are jobs that are available in addition to the jobs that we have now. We have to pioneer tourism that doesn't have to just depend on the beach, but the ecotourism of Portland and Trelawney and St. Elizabeth in the cockpit country are all important elements of using our own history. Pharmaceuticals and unlocking the innovative potential there. So Jamaica needs to move beyond these things. And you come back to your pandemic question. The truth is, the entire world is learning day by day how to deal with the pandemic. There is no ready-made answer on it. But I say again that we have to be in it together and not pretend by either withholding information or sidestepping the inclusion of others to deal with this pandemic second spike that is upon us.
Right before we wrap, we're mentioning the pandemic again. The world, we're in a global health crisis. What hope do you have to give the nation at this time, Dr. Phillips?
Well, I think I can say one thing. If we protect the Jamaican people, we will protect our economy. So there's need for much more testing. There's need for much more screening as we let people in through our ports. There is need for greater protection for our health workers and our first responders in all of these areas. And that means that we have to mobilize the nation resources. We said so in the Parliament to the Prime Minister and to the Minister of Health. Let's mobilize all the young people and the students at the universities to work alongside the health workers to deal with the screening. It's obvious that people are coming in. There has been no monitoring or inadequate monitoring of the quarantine commitments that some of the people have made. If Jamaica develops a reputation as being a highly infectious environment, then you can kiss your tourism revival goodbye. So we need to know we are all in it. We need all our workers, the people at the craft vendors in Montego Bay and Ocherios. They are dependent on tourists coming in, and we have to assure them that the tourists who come are going to be properly screened and will be safe. But if the reputation goes out that Jamaica is inefficient, people are not going to come.
Okay. And finally, what is your personal undertaking to the nation?
To be always truthful, honest, and transparent.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Peter Phillips, the President of the People's National Party and the Leader of the Opposition, who will be contesting in our next general election on September 3rd. Vote with your conscience. I can't tell you how to vote. As the country reels from crime, as we live in fear and uncertainty because of COVID, what are we really voting on? What are the issues? What is the rescue plan? What is the recovery plan? Why are you going to vote? And what are you to vote for? Those are the questions that we have to ask. Are you satisfied with the government's performance? Are you satisfied with the opposition's plan as a government in waiting? Who has the better vision? And who do you trust? Is your vote for sale? And while you ruminate, let's move from a language of protest to patriotism. This is Hardline. I'm Ashley Ann Foster, and I'm going to be with you every Sunday at 6 p.m. And I'd like it if you would always, always come.
My sister wakes me up every morning with the mantra that not voting anywhere is a threat to democracy everywhere. And therefore, I do believe that even if it's just for her, she's not eligible to vote at this time, I will be.
Oh, I'm voting because it's my constitutional right.
I will be voting. Why? Because the Prime Minister's performance is very good.
I'm voting because life has to go on as usual, and there are other areas, that have voted, and those, it was conducted successfully, Eastern Caribbean. Trinidad, for example, and important decisions cannot be held, cannot be suspended. So regardless of the pandemic, we have to vote.
I won't vote because I don't have the necessary paperwork at this time to vote. And then again, what we're going to be voting for?
It's time for election at this time. We don't think you're ready right now. I tell you straight, you understand? Put things like, get the thing on track. Let's just say they might run an election. As right now, Jamaica people are tired of doing something like that. People are suffer. The prosperity thing, it not work. You understand me? I'm not talking straight for me still. This is not about politics. This is about reality. You understand me? So Andrew Wall's government, he need to come straight to the Jamaican people.
This time I think everybody needs to vote, because guess what? We shouldn't even be facing an election in the middle of all of this craziness that is happening. So the very fact that them even calling an election means that them don't deserve to be in office. They need to be out. And if the other one come in and do the same craziness, take them out too.
From 2017, the Prime Minister was saying that he was going to do a mandatory election, like in legislation, but that has not come to pass. So probably we're only in this problem about calling the election. So that's just my take on it.
I don't know how he's going to strategically implement social distancing during election like that, because you're talking about crowd control, but at the same time you're allowing people to be gathered, so it's nonsensical to me.
Hardline with Ashley Ann.